All right, welcome guys. This is another episode of The Scoop, Mackinac Center for Public Policy. Conversations we have about current issues that are going on in the state. Today we're going to talk about what's going on with restrictions that the state still has in place for COVID, specifically on education, and then also just general restrictions. So joining us, we've got Mike Van Beek, he's the Director of Research here at the Center, and Ben DeGroat, Director of Education Policy. So welcome guys. First of all, what is still in place at the state level? We've had a lot of changes over the last year of what's going on. We've had Supreme Court decisions. We've had going to MDHHS. We have all these different departments. So for your normal person out there, what are we seeing that's still in place?
Yeah, well, there's still epidemic orders that are in place that are issued from the state health department. Those limit gatherings. So individual residential gatherings can't be greater than 10. Non-residential ones can't be greater than 25. And then water parks are still closed for some reason, and so are nightclubs. There's never been explained why those places are particularly risky, but they're still closed. Restaurants are open now, February 1st, and they're at 25% capacity, which is one of the lowest rates in the Midwest. Minnesota just announced that they're going to go to 50% capacity. Chicago's at 40%. Indiana's at 50%. So those are the main things that are still in place from those epidemic orders. But then there's also MIOSHA orders, which require people to work remotely and put all of the social distancing requirements on businesses as well. So those are also in place until April, and MIOSHA has already signaled that they want to extend those till next October.
All right, so yeah, we got to get back to the business restrictions in a second. But Ben, what about with schools? So is the state restricting things? What rules do they have in place, and what power do local districts have?
Right. So I mean, the state still has guidelines out there for education, and there's masking rules. Most of the people in the school over a certain age, most of the time, have to wear that face covering. They're doing more to space the desks apart. They're doing the temperature checks and things like that to make sure that students and staff are healthy. And every week they're reporting on how many cases are developing in the schools. And of course, all that I mentioned is for the schools that are actually having an in-person instruction option. So that's not all of them. We'll get into that later, I know. But for those that do, there are at least some health and safety protocols they have to follow. So
the state has these guidelines, but they're leaving it up to the locals, right? Local districts, totally up to them how much they want to be in and out. And that's K through 12?
K through 12. For a while, November to December, there was a brief period where the governor mandated that all high schools had to shut down for face-to-face instruction. But for now, everybody has the option of being open. Since the pandemic started last March, we've had about 1 in 6 school districts that have had no in-person option for that whole time period. And those we see they tend to be larger districts. They tend to be districts that serve more low-income and minority kids. Some districts have, for the most part, since the beginning of the school year, had some kind of in-person option. And then there's been a few districts in between that have kind of shifted back and forth. But the trend line now seems to be towards more districts heading back to in-person instruction.
All right, so 1 out of every 6 parents in the state are really, really upset right now with their locals. Mike, you mentioned that we've got these business restrictions and with MIOSHA. So what are those? Because that's separate from the executive orders. That's separate from these MDHHS orders.
Yeah, so MIOSHA has the ability to issue emergency rules. They can last for 6 months and can be extended one time for another 6 months. So they did that on October 14 after the Supreme Court ruled that Governor Whitmer's emergency powers were unconstitutional. So those put in place restrictions on particular types of businesses. There's different restrictions on different types. And then there's also general restrictions on all businesses requiring social distancing, requiring face coverings. And then also, probably the most significant one is requiring any work that can be done remotely to be done remotely. So that's impacts a large number of employees for certain, and those will, as I said, likely be extended and go until next October.
So the MIOSHA rules came in October, so they go through April, and so you're saying those could actually be extended, that through the fall we're going to have where people, if they can work from home, have to work from home.
Yeah, and I think last week MIOSHA was before a legislative committee and indicated that they are planning to extend those. Whether they'll make a change or not to the remote work situation, I'm not sure, but I would expect that they'll just keep them the same way as they are.
So Ben, what are some of the districts we're seeing that are still fully closed down, and is there a plan through the end of this school year that they're talking about reopening, or what are you hearing?
Yeah, the one that's been in the limelight the most would be Ann Arbor, the fourth largest district in Michigan. Been a lot of parent outcry, actually a lot of parents teaming up with physicians to file petitions with the school board and say, look, we need to allow at least some kind of in-person learning option for kids, even if it's just the youngest kids, the special needs kids. And they've been kind of going back and forth, and the latest word from Ann Arbor is no date certain on when they're going to start. Other examples are Kalamazoo. Here's a district that just announced that they're done. They haven't had in-person learning since before the pandemic started, and they're not going to until next school year. So that's a whole year plus off for that district. Some of the larger districts like Detroit and Dearborn, at the moment are full-time remote, but at least have announced some dates when they're going to come back. The governor's urged, in the last few weeks, she started urging districts to get back by March 1st, and these are a couple districts that are trying to follow that. So there's a variety of things going on, but again, the trend line's moving toward more districts trying to get back to in-person.
Well, and what is causing this? I mean, you have the federal CDC says kids should be in school. They found that it's safe. With certain, as long as you have certain things in place. The governor's come out. She wants, for the most part, wants a plan, wants me to be back in place if cases are low. So why are these places not back in school? And I mean, it's not that every kid has to go back in school. We're talking about giving the option, where just the option of people to have in-person learning. So what's holding that up?
Right, exactly. And I say over and over again, every child deserves an option for in-person learning. There's only one real source for this holding things back, and that's the teachers union. They've been the ones pressuring the administrations and local school boards in places like Ann Arbor because of concerns about staff safety, even though we've had guidelines and research out from respectable institutions and researchers since last fall or before, saying that schools are not super spreaders, that we can do this responsibly and safely. But we're seeing slowly that the teachers unions are being backed down on their argument, because the more evidence comes forward, the more we see that the things that are starting to weigh more on people's consciences are things like the mental health of kids who've been isolated for a long time, or the fact that most kids need to have that in-person classroom model to succeed in learning.
So if I want to start going to a nightclub here pretty quickly, so
In Midland?
yeah, in Midland, wherever, I'll drive if I have to. So what does the state have things in place that says, all right, when cases go below this level, when deaths do, that we're going to move to the next step? How are they looking at that, Mike?
They generally have not used any type of formulaic process like that, systematic process. Other states have. So Illinois has something like that. Indiana does. Ohio, I think, has somewhat of a system like that as well. And then the other thing that the state, Michigan, is not doing that it used to do, and that other states have done throughout this entire process, is use county-based decisions or local-based decisions, regional-based determinations, because we know that the spread of COVID is different depending on where you are in the state. So for whatever reason, basically since the epidemic orders came out in early October, the state has been treated as one big unit, and that's it. So the same rule for everybody, no matter if you're in Marquette or in Detroit.
All right, so I mean, the good news in the state, we've got higher vaccination rates, we've got cases going down, we've got deaths going down. So we are seeing some reopenings. The bad news seems to be for parents that in some districts, really not seeing a lot of hope for reopening this year, and kind of arbitrary or no standards at all in terms of how things might be opening. But we appreciate you guys being here, and we'll keep everybody up to date. And if you want to learn more about this, please check out our website, mackinac.org. We try to keep up to date with these orders and get information out to people. So thanks, guys.